So I want to talk about Bruce Springsteen versus the Boss. Um, I've been thinking about Springsteen a lot lately, just because he just announced a huge tour. I don't know that U.S. states have been announced yet, but I know he's coming to the United States. And I was talking to some friends about whether or not I was going to go, and I was just kind of like, no, I'm not really interested. I've seen him six times total, three times solo, acoustic, and three times with the E Street Band. And I think I'm just tired of the E Street Band, to be honest. I often think about Bruce Springsteen versus the Boss, and I much prefer Bruce Springsteen. Um, I was 12 years old in 1984 when Born in the USA came out. It was everywhere. It was huge. It was a really big deal album, right? I mean, it had so many hits on it. Born in the USA, Cover Me, I'm on Fire, Glory Days, Dancing in the Dark. Even My Hometown I think was a single. I think my first exposure was probably Dancing in the Dark. I remember my friend Chris had the cassette, and I was kind of interested in it. And then I ordered it, I believe, from a record company, probably Columbia, 12 records for a penny. A lot of my early stuff was that way. Um, and I don't remember it ever really grabbing me that much. I think I just it seems weird to say this at 12 years old, to think of yourself as having this attitude at 12 years old, but I think even then I thought it was pretty cheesy. I thought like the Dancing in the Dark video, with him inviting, who we later found out was Courtney Cox when she got famous, on stage to dance, just seemed kind of hokey and dumb. I don't know. I was into, I guess, more rock stuff. I mean, yeah, Springsteen's rock, of course, but it just seemed kind of silly to me. Um, Born in the USA, I think I liked. I just was kind of surprised, or I'm not sure I was a big fan of his gruff voice on that song. But I remember always liking the breakdown, where the band kind of stops and then it comes back in. And I just always thought that was great. And one of the songs I absolutely loved was I'm on Fire, and still do to this day. The video, there's a video for that one. It was a really short song. I think it's probably, I bet it's under 3 minutes. And I like that, and I think because it was really stripped down, and it was not bombastic and huge. I mean, a song like Cover Me doesn't do a damn thing for me. Um, some of these songs I know are left over from Nebraska, an album that I'll get into in a few minutes here, that I definitely like. But I can't really say that even when I've heard the Nebraska outtakes of them. I believe Downbound Train was one of them. Working on the Highway might have been. Working on the Highway might have been one too. I can't really say they've done much for me. Another song that I like is My Hometown. Again, probably because it's more stripped down. It's the message comes through more clearly. It took me a long time to really figure out what Born in the USA was all about. So I was intrigued. It was my introduction to Springsteen. So I'm intrigued by it. I'm intrigued by this album. I'm intrigued by this guy who I find out when I hear this record. I thought he was a new act at first. I mean, this is the era of Cyndi Lauper and Madonna, Prince. Prince for all. I knew he had 1999. I knew he had Purple Rain. I thought that Springsteen might have had one other album or something. I thought he was a new artist, which is pretty cool, to be. I think he was 35 years old, and I think this is album number six. I don't know. Let's see. There, three, four. Yes, album number six, studio record. So it was pretty cool to find out that he had all these other albums, and the one that, of course, I naturally was led to just by. Um, it might be album number seven. I'm sorry. We'll go through them. All right, we have Greetings from Ashbury Park. We have The Wild, Innocent, and E Street Shuffle. We have Born to Run. We have Darkness on the Edge of Town. We have The River. We have Nebraska, and then we have Soda's album number seven, which is pretty crazy, to think that he was a new artist, or at least for me, and then realize he had all these albums. The one that I dubbed off of a friend was Born to Run. So. And that one kind of did something for me. I remember I really liked Thunder Road a lot, and of course the song Born to Run. The rest of it, I think, honestly, I think it sounded old to me at the time. It sounded like this '70s thing, um, and I never totally got into it. But I was always kind of intrigued by this guy, and then there came this box set that came out, and I think my parents bought it for me for Christmas. This isn't I had the cassette version. Now I have an album, but it's 5 discs, 5 records, three cassettes. I don't know how many CDs, but I'm guessing three. And it's just a collection of all these songs from 1975 to 1985 live. And this changed everything for me. I mean, it was like this huge discovery of having all of this music of this guy. And it was like, the songs that captured me again are probably not the ones that did it for a lot of people. They were the more stripped down, romantic, interesting songs. And Thunder Road, this acoustic version from the Roxy in 1975, is the best version I've ever heard. I absolutely love it. But songs like Fire, of course, Hungry Heart, Because the Night, The River, of course. And I think the Nebraska stuff that's on here too really, really kind of spoke to me. But I think number one for me on this whole thing, the biggest thing about it was the stories. Was realizing that this is a guy who tells amazing stories. I mean, feuds with his father about getting, they're going to make a man out of you. They're going to draft you for the war, and then his father saying good. When Springsteen doesn't get drafted, they don't call his number up. Those kinds of stories are just amazing on here, and that is what really kind of introduced me to Springsteen the storyteller. To this day, I really love Springsteen the storyteller. So I had this box set. It was a lot to get through, and I don't think the third. Again, I'm talking cassette terms. The third cassette, at least this second side of the cassette, which in this case would probably be the fifth LP, that stuff didn't do a whole lot for me because it's live versions of stuff from the Born in the USA tour, and it just seemed bombastic and huge and just bigger than life, but not in a good way, I mean, I was excited about some concerts that were coming through town, like Van Halen 1984 with David Lee Roth. I wanted to go to more than anything. I'll get into that someday, talking about these formative records. But, I don't remember ever really wanting to see Springsteen. I probably couldn't have anyway, while I was too young, but also tickets just went by incredibly fast. It was sold out in seconds. But I don't remember ever thinking like, oh, this would be a great concert to go to. Of course, once I got this box set, I was, kind of definitely more curious about him. He seemed to go quiet after this box set for a while. Of course, when you're young, it's like the years seem a lot slower than they do now. 1984, Born in the USA came out, and then it wasn't until 1987 that Tunnel of Love came out. And I remember I subscribed to Rolling Stone at the time. I remember hearing that Tunnel of Love was going to be a country record, which I was intrigued by. And there's something about knowing that it wasn't going to be this big Born in the USA type thing that really intrigued me at 15 years old. And I bought it soon after it came out, and there's something about even like the album cover, of him standing in front of an old car, looking kind of serious, and there's just something that captured me about it. I mean, you can tell just by the cover, it's not Born in the USA. I mean, he's not showing his ass in the American flag. So I bought it, and I remember instantly liking it. I mean, Ain't Got You, I just absolutely loved. All That Heaven Will Allow, Tougher Than the Rest. I mean, probably my favorite song was One Step Up. Brilliant Disguise, the single, and also the other single, Tunnel of Love. Totally did something for me. I like the storytelling on it. I don't know if I totally understood. I mean, it's a very mature record about kind of a collapse of a relationship. I think he's writing about his soon-to-be ex-wife, first wife. So a lot of this stuff wasn't really, it was going over my head a little bit. But man, I just liked it. I like this side of Springsteen, and it made me a fan, and I was curious what he's going to do next. Of course, there was a super long wait. I don't remember him coming through town. It was off my radar. Maybe I wasn't interested, or I really don't remember it being a big thing in high school that Springsteen came to town on this tour. Um, I was living in Kansas City. I guess I could check it out on Setlist FM or something and see if he actually came through. But it seemed like an eternity. Not that I was eagerly awaiting it, but I just remember thinking, whatever happened to Bruce Springsteen? Because it was a long time, like 5 years before he put out another record. And that was double records, or two records released on the same day, Human Touch and Lucky Town. And I remember liking Lucky Town, the single, and I kind of liked Human Touch, but I thought it was kind of a rewrite of A Ton of Love or something. It didn't sound that fresh to me. And I never picked up the records. Maybe it's because there were two of them. You know, I mean, Guns N' Roses did something the same year, and of course I picked those up. But there's something about just having these two records that it was like too much, and I don't know, maybe I'd moved on at the time, but I didn't pick them up. And it was years before I heard them, actually, all the way through, and they still don't do much for me. I mean, a lot of them are new to me. Would be new to me still today because I just never listened to them more than like once or twice. Then I'm in college. I might have even been, I think I was done with college, just getting done with college. And I worked for a record label, and I think somebody gave me a promo for The Ghost of Tom Joad. And I listened to this record, and I was super, again, kind of like Ton of Love. I was super intrigued. Sorry, the light's getting a weird reflection on here. I should probably take these out of the sleeves. But this album, I was intrigued by the sleeve. And you know, when I got it, there's like he cites sources in there. He cites sources of where he got this information from, where it's like a study, you know. It's not, it's got source material, which I found kind of fascinating. And it's all about the American Southwest, and mostly, you know, the story of Mexican Americans coming to America to look for a better life, and usually not finding one. Or I think just about every story on here, unfortunately, kind of ends that way. But yeah, he's got Journey to Nowhere is a quote, and all these different articles. And principally, I think the biggest influence on this was The Grapes of Wrath. I mean, Ghost of Tom Joad speaks to that, and that intrigued me too. The fact that this guy Springsteen could take an author and get so influenced by their work that they would cite it as a source and make a whole record. And it was a storytelling, and it's super stripped down. Some people, you know, kind of have a problem with it because they say that there's just not that many tunes on this. And you know, he certainly worked up live versions of Youngstown, especially Youngstown, and then later I think The Ghost of Tom Joad on more recent tours, into more rock songs. But I like this record a lot, and I became kind of obsessed with it. And this record is the one that made me look back and get Nebraska. You know, I didn't know this existed, or I think I might have heard of it. I'm sure when I flipped through record bins when I was a kid and I saw this, I'm sure I saw this, but I just didn't know what it was. And he had a lot of records out. But when I got turned on to Ghost of Tom Joad and I worked back and got Nebraska, oh, holy crap. I mean, I was in. You know, Nebraska is my favorite Springsteen record, but hands down. And I was totally in. I totally into it. Love the stories. And then an amazing thing happened. Bruce Springsteen announced a solo tour, and he came to the auditorium that I graduated college from, probably just a few months before he came through. And I got tickets, and I was sitting in like the 10th row or something, really good seats. And it changed everything. It made me see him at these two albums, Nebraska and Tom Joad, and then to some extent the stories on Live 75, 85, didn't already do it. Seeing him live and seeing him do very stripped down and radically different versions of songs like Darkness on the Edge of Town, or I'm trying to think of what else. Other songs that I'm trying to think of that other song. I think I'd have to go back and check, but he did. Well, Bruce Born in the USA. He did a radically different version of that. He did stuff like This Hard Land, um, and a few songs. I think he eschewed anything like Born to Run, even Thunder Road, um, anything Hungry Heart. He never did any of those kind of hits. And I remember, in fact, when he first started, he was making kind of some jokes about there'll be no crying babies tonight. I'll ask you to leave. And he said there'll be none of that Born in the USA bullshit here tonight. And I was like, holy shit, yes, yes. I don't like the Born in the USA bullshit. Yes, I want this, and it was incredible. And in fact, I found a bootleg recently of one of those shows from the '96 tour. And I think I'm gonna revisit it for sure. Download one. But yeah, so that changed everything for me. And I'm consistently, every time he comes to town, either as Bruce Springsteen, the E Street Band, or Bruce Springsteen, I'm faced with a decision whether to go or not. Bruce Springsteen solo, every single time, I would not miss that as long as I could get tickets. I said I've seen him 3 times with E Street Band and 3 times solo. I've actually seen him 4 times solo if you count the New York on Broadway. But when Devils and Dust came through, and I believe that was 2005, I think, or six, when that came through, I saw him twice. I saw him twice on that tour, and both times were amazing. And that album too was more stripped down. I didn't like it as much as I like Nebraska, and not even as much as Tom Joad. But I appreciated that he was back in that storyteller mode. And I remember when Tom Joad came out in interviews at the time, he said he felt like he really found his calling now in his voice and knew what he was going to do for the rest of his life. So I might have been the only person, I mean, I'm sure there are a handful of us, that was genuinely disappointed when the boss, fronted the Street Band, got it back together and went on the road. Because I was like, no, I thought it was going to be you being kind of a Woody Guthrie, I don't know, Bob Dylan character or something, not this big guy, fronting a ever-growing band. But I bought tickets, and I went and saw him, and on that first tour, I think in 1999, before he put out The Rising, it was just a 98, 99, I think. And I thought it was the cheesiest thing, one of the cheesiest things I've ever seen. It was like a pep rally for people that don't go to rock shows. Everybody was just, the house lights were on, and people were just, it was more about the audience than it was a show, it seemed like. And just the 1, 2, 3, 4 count offs get really annoying after a while. And it just seemed like he was just, falling down on his knees constantly. And should I get up? Should I get up? Should I do it again? And it just seemed like a shtick that I found really annoying. I didn't like it. I can't remember. I'm sure at the time I must have liked something of that, but I don't remember. Maybe Santa Claus is Coming to Town, because I think it was close to Christmas, and it was just kind of more of a festive mood. But I did not like that. And after I saw him twice on Devils and Dust, I was able to see him do a Vote for Change show with REM and The National and Bright Eyes, and Neil Young showed up. It was great. It was phenomenal. And they were great. The Street Band was great. And I think part of why I really liked them is it was a shorter set. They could only play like an hour and a half, and it was great. It felt muscular and lean, and it was awesome. I have no complaints. I really liked it. And then I saw him one more time after that, a few years later. I would guess like 2010, 2011. And that was great too. It was a super long show, but I was just so impressed by how he could just keep going, and the physicality of his show, and the fact that by that time he was probably close to 70. I was really impressed. I thought it was great. And I don't think I minded that he was doing his boss shtick to an extent. But in general, I just don't like the boss character. I really don't. I think it just is too predictable. I don't like the idea of going to see him and having him do all the typical moves, do the 1, 2, 3, 4 count off, and do this. I don't even know whose guitars are plugged in at this point at E Street Band. I mean, how many guitars do you have on that stage? It just seems dumb to me in some way. I feel like I'm gonna get some pushback if people are actually watching these videos because, I mean, people love that stuff. Of course, this tour was gonna sell out instantly, probably in the United States too. There's pent up demand. I mean, he did the Broadway thing, but a lot of people couldn't get to New York or even get tickets if they were in New York to see that. Um, but it's just not my Springsteen. I've gone back and I got turned on to Darkness on the Edge of Town through those solo shows, that solo show that I saw for Ghost of Tom Joad, and of course I ended up getting everything really, except surprisingly those two records, '92. I never really picked those up. I've heard them. I think I have downloads of them, but um, anyway, that's for me. It's always Bruce Springsteen versus the Boss, and I think Bruce Springsteen wins out. So I would be curious to hear other people's comments, and I will definitely be curious to see how the tour goes from a distance and following the set list and all that. And I'm really excited for any kind of new Springsteen music to come out. As far as the Bruce Springsteen, another recent example is Western Stars. I think that album is incredible. It's a Springsteen I like. It's a Springsteen, to me, seems age appropriate for him. I didn't Letter to You. At the time I thought was okay, but I can't. I don't know. I don't really. I don't pull it off the shelf, and I don't really foresee myself doing that for a while. But Western Stars, oh my God, the movie too is great, and I just got the soundtrack album that they released for that, which is interesting too. I think the regular one I personally like a lot better, but that's Bruce Springsteen to me. Hello Sunshine as a single, I was floored. Usually his singles drive me nuts. I'm always expecting something different than what I'm getting, but I don't get it. I don't get what I want. But with Hello Darkness or Hello Sunshine, I was wow. I was super excited for it, and the album totally delivered. So that's where I'm at. The Springsteen versus the Boss. Let me know what you think.